The 1980s, a time when men were moustached, cars could talk, and computers squealed like dying modems just to load a game. You had Knight Rider on the telly, Airwolf in the skies, and the A-Team blowing up stuff with zero casualties. Now, we didn't stream shows, we taped them on VHS and prayed our mum didn't record songs of praise over it. Posters of Samantha Fox, Kim Basinger and Linda Carter adorned bedroom walls, and for a brief moment we all thought we had a shot with them, despite the bowl cuts, asthma inhalers and ZX Spectrum suntans, of course. But this was a golden age, the days of opal fruits, skateboards with no grip and typing in cheat codes from the back of Crash magazine like you were hacking the Pentagon. And at the centre of it all, the mighty ZX Spectrum, a little black box of magic, loading screens that looked like modern art, and games that were hard as nails and twice as addictive. So join me as I dust off the cassette tapes, untangle the joystick cords, and look back at 10 ZX Spectrum games that stole our time, tested our friendships, and absolutely wrecked our keyboards. Hang on, I thought this was about Specky games, not Scale X Trick, I hear you cry. Yep, you're right, but a bit of background first. This is me and James. I'm the one with black hair. It was the first year of secondary school I met James. He had a ZX Spectrum, I had 10p coins. We bonded over pixelated aliens, horror flicks that ruined our sleep, and arcade games that stole our pocket money. 35 years later, still mates, just with better graphics and bad backs. RoboCop, the game. For me and James, this wasn't just another title, it was a moment in our teenage years that we would never forget. I still remember the day he got his hands on a bootleg copy of the RoboCop movie. We gathered at his house, pressed play on the VHS recorder, the opening credits hit, the logo flickering on the screen like it was straight out of a gritty, neon-soaked future, and we were hooked. We didn't know it yet, but this film would haunt our dreams and shape our entire gaming experience. The next logical step, when the game dropped, we had to play it. And when we did, oh man, we played it endlessly. The moment we fired up that game, we were instantly transformed into RoboCop himself, a cyborg cop with justice on his mind and bullets in his barrel. Now, the game was brutal, but not in the way that you think. The graphics were iconic, pixelated streets filled with crime, robotic enemies that exploded in glorious bursts of colour, and RoboCop himself, a towering figure of justice in a world that seemed out to get him. Now, the gameplay was a little clunky, but every punch, every gunshot felt right, because we'd seen it in the film. But it wasn't just the game, it was an experience. We'd sit in front of the Specky, Kempston joystick in hand, locked into that CRT telly. And then, just like that, RoboCop's pursuit of justice became ours. Every level was a new battle, every new mission felt like we were part of that iconic moment when RoboCop stormed the streets of Detroit, kicking down doors and fighting for the little guy. I mean, sure, we didn't have his advanced cybernetic body or his superhuman strength, but we did have a stack of snacks, a few cans of pop, and the determination to defeat every criminal in the game, one pixelated thug at a time. You see, we didn't just play RoboCop, we lived it. It wasn't just a game, it was our adventure. Every shot, every takedown, every slow motion fall felt like a little tribute to that first day with the VHS tape. The game was just as thrilling, albeit a little glitchy, and for us, it became the ultimate way to relive that film magic. Spy vs. Spy. Spy vs. Spy was less of a video game and more of a two-player trap-fueled grudge match, a Cold War-style standoff between two oddly proportioned agents with massive heads and trench coats that somehow held a large number of booby traps. The goal? Steal intel and escape before your opponent did. The reality? Set traps, get trapped, shout accusations, repeat. Now, to be fair, James loved this game, possibly because he had the mind of a cartoon villain and could predict exactly where I'd step, what I'd open, and how to make me suffer for it. I, on the other hand, spent most of my time walking into electrified doors, exploding furniture, and getting clubbed in the face with an umbrella trap. Basically, I was the Wile E. Coyote of this dynamic duo. And to add insult to injury, the game was split screen. So not only was I failing, I could watch James succeed in real time. There he was, disarming traps like some trench-coated ninja, collecting all the gear and then waiting by the exit smugly while I panicked, got zapped by a doorknob and dropped my passport into a potted plant. James would always say, "It's not about the winning, it's about the fun." Easy to say when you're winning, James. But even with the losses, the rage and the feeling of being outwitted by someone, Spy vs. Spy had a certain charm. It was chaos with rules, slapstick sabotage, a never-ending cycle of revenge traps and smug laughter. Looking back, I realise I might have enjoyed it more than I let on. Not because I ever won, oh no, that didn't happen, but because it was one of those games where you didn't just play it, you competed. It wasn't about graphics or story, it was about laying a bucket on a door trap and hearing your mate scream, "You set that up 10 minutes ago!" In hindsight, Spy vs. Spy was basically the childhood version of a trust exercise that always failed. Some games are epic, some are flashy, and then there's Juggernaut. A game where you drove a massive truck across empty roads to deliver something. Somewhere. Maybe. The instructions were vague, but we didn't care because we were in a truck, and that meant something. While other kids were dodging ghosts, fighting crime, or platforming the way through acid rain and bees, we were driving. Not fast, not dangerously, just responsibly, in 3 glorious gears, first, second, and reverse. It was top down, the graphics were chunky enough to chip a tooth, and the sound effects were basic to say the least. But for some reason, we loved it. There was something hypnotic about the slow crawl from pick-up to drop-off, something calming about following those roads. And maybe, just maybe, it left a bigger impact than I realised. Because while most kids moved on from Juggernaut to shoot-'em-ups and sword fights, it stayed with me. It stuck. And somewhere in the back of my brain, nestled between memories of loading screens and dodgy keyboard controls, Juggernaut waited, quietly whispering, "This is the life. This is the way." Fast forward 35 years later, and I'm a trucker, an actual one. Real roads, real deliveries, and real life potholes. Yeah, the graphics have improved slightly, and there's more than 3 gears now, sometimes too many, but the feeling, the vibe of that original game, still there, still the same. It was like Euro Truck Simulator's weird low-poly grandad, a sort of 8-bit omen. It didn't need explosions or fancy storylines, just a truck, a road, and a sense of purpose. It was about the journey, the rhythm, the quiet hum of the engine in your mind. Now, as you can see, it looks simple, but for me, it was one of the most unexpectedly influential games I ever played. Sometimes Destiny doesn't come with a cutscene. Sometimes it comes in 3 gears and 16 colours. BMX Simulator wasn't just a game, it was a lifestyle. A glitchy, chaotic, impossible to steer lifestyle, viewed from above like some kind of experimental sports documentary. Now, the game featured 7 tracks, and that's right, 7 opportunities to crash in new and creative ways. And while the game was a bit, let's say, slippery, what truly made this game unforgettable was the replay function. Oh man, the replays. Watching your BMX avatar spiral off the track like a rogue frisbee, crashing into pixelated hay bales, all in glorious slow-mo. We watched those replays like they were Oscar-worthy short films. Every crash became cinematic gold. Now, me and James spent hours battling it out, 2-player mode, bird's eye view, shouting things like, "I was in front," No way, you cut that corner. Did you just fly into the crowd, you chaffinch? There wasn't a crowd. It was just like 2 trees and a fence, but we imagined one. Now, strangely enough, while we were collating our top 10 Specky games, I tried to remember the name of this game, and all I could picture was the BMX sprite and those handlebars. Those blocky little bars were seared into my memory like a badge of honour. They didn't steer well, but they looked cool. So I asked James if he remembered the name and mentioned the handlebars on the BMX sprite, and he just laughed because I'd said the word sprite. Sprite. I suppose if you say it many times, it does sound funny. Anyway, around that time that we were playing the game, mountain bikes were all the rage. We weren't just playing BMX Simulator, we were living it, except with more shin bruises. I remember James and I had gone for a bez on our mountain bikes. It was flying down a narrow path and promptly smashed into a rock so hard it winded himself and went flying over the handlebars like an actual physics glitch. I swear it was like watching a real-life BMX Simulator replay in full resolution. No pixels required. It was okay. It was just winded, but I laughed. I laughed hard. Sorry, James. That crash is still burned into my memory more than any game high score. In a weird way, BMX Simulator didn't just make us laugh at digital carnage, it trained us to see the comedy in real-life wipeouts, which, frankly, was invaluable. Daley Thompson's Decathlon wasn't just a game, it was a full-body workout in disguise. Track and field events brought to life through 2-button mashing, so intense it could be legally classified as cardio. Me and James, we went all in. Our mission, help Daley bring home the gold. Our weapons, one Kempston joystick, a ZX Spectrum keyboard, and some good wrist health. We were teenagers after all. Now, Daley Thompson was my absolute hero. The man was a machine in real life, and somehow even more intense in pixel form. His in-game moustache had more power than most athletes. Now, we smashed those keys like we were playing drums in a heavy metal band. Z and X, obliterated. The spacebar, traumatised. That Kempston joystick, reduced to a loose stick flailing inside its own casing. Daley ran fast, but we typed faster and louder. And the events were brutal. 100-metre sprint, long jump, hurdles, javelin. And every single one of them involved flailing like a caffeinated crab having a panic attack. At some point, we realised we weren't even watching the screen anymore. We were staring at each other's fingers like gamblers watching a roulette wheel. Come on! Come on! No, you slipped! That game turned us into tiny, sweaty Olympians in James's room. And here's the kicker. I loved it so much, I actually got into track and field. Daley didn't just win medals on the screen. He inspired real-life PBs in a kid who learned discipline from mashing a keyboard until it gave up. Head Over Heels was pure genius. A surreal, mind-bending isometric adventure where you played as Head, the bouncy brainiac, and Heels, the speedy footfella, each with their own powers, movement quirks, and serious style. The concept? You'd separate and reunite the characters to solve puzzles, like a weird intergalactic rom-com but with more levers and less emotional closure. And me and James loved it. We'd take turns, one playing Head, the other Heels, because obviously you had to pick your specialist. I was always more of a Heels guy. Speed over brains, thank you very much. And then there was the moment we discovered the holy grail of 80s gaming, the poke. For the uninitiated, pokes were cheat codes you typed in before the game loaded. You could get infinite lives, immunity, even unlock areas early. It was a ZX Spectrum version of hacking the Matrix. And every time one of us said poke, we'd jab the other right in the ribs. Poke, ooh, poke, hey, I was drinking. And then we'd laugh like idiots. We did eventually complete it, but yeah, we cheated. I regret nothing. And despite the jank of the isometric controls, sometimes diagonals felt like you needed an aviation licence, Head Over Heels pulled us in. The puzzles were clever, the design was surreal in a way only 80s games could be, and the characters, weirdly charming for a disembodied dog thing and a bouncing head with arms. But most of all, it was the teamwork. One of us piloting, the other shouting advice, occasionally blaming the other for falling into a trap. It was chaos. Beautiful, shared chaos. Look, the Spectrum had a few racing games, but ATV Challenge was, for us, different. It was part motocross, part chaos simulator, and part cold-blooded rivalry. Sure, you could play solo, but the real action was two-player mode. That's when things got intense. James and I didn't just race, we competed like there was a pixelated trophy and bragging rights for the rest of the school year. Overtaking each other, ruthless. Crashing, hilarious. And if one of us won by a fraction of a second, oh, you heard about it for weeks. Technically, though, this was about finishing the race, beating the clock, nailing jumps. But for us, the real challenge came after the finish line. Every time we crossed it, we had a singular goal: rotate the ATV into a specific position just as the victory music ended. You think that'd be simple, right? Nope. Not when your rider's made of 12 pixels and physics that were clearly coded by someone who'd never even seen an actual human fall off a bike. Fall off in this game and your guy would flip through the air like a failed Olympic gymnast, arms and legs doing something, definitely not obeying gravity and usually landing face first in a very undignified heap. But we didn't care, because the game was awesome. It was fast, it was janky, it was ridiculous. And trying to land that perfect spin at the finish became an obsession. Sometimes we nailed it, sometimes we overshot and looked like we were trying to park a shopping trolley full of fireworks. But every time we laughed until we nearly fell off our chairs. And honestly, that was the magic of ATV Challenge. It wasn't just racing, it was about turning chaos into choreography, turning crashes into comedy, and turning a Spectrum game into our own two-player art installation with bad physics and even worse coordination. Before Grand Theft Auto, there was Turbo Esprit, the game where the crime was irrelevant, the driving was everything, and the walls, well, were there to be tested. If you ever wanted to experience a slightly disorienting, unpolished version of a city in chaos, this was the game for you. Sure, technically, the game was about fighting crime. There were bad guys, I think, and a series of missions that involved taking them down. But let's be real. For me and James, it was less about saving the city and more about saving our sanity from the mess we were about to cause behind the wheel. We spent way more time in the practice mode than any of the actual missions, because practice mode didn't care what you did. You could just drive aimlessly around the city. You see, this wasn't a game that punished you for crashing into walls, for making impossible turns, or for completely ignoring any concept of good driving. In fact, the more we crashed, the more we laughed. It was like playing bumper cars, but with actual traffic and 8-bit carnage. The real challenge wasn't fighting crime or chasing criminals, it was surviving the corners. The turning radius was a crime in itself. No matter how hard we tried to just make a sharp turn, the car would flop straight into a wall. In the end, though, it didn't matter. We were having the time of our lives. The driving was so bad, it was good. We didn't care about missions, we didn't care about crime. We just wanted to see how long we could drive without crashing. Spoiler alert, not long. And yeah, there were moments when we'd try to play the game right. We'd engage in the missions and for a brief moment think we could actually take down the bad guys. But before we knew it, we were back to just aimlessly driving around. Like in any great sandbox game, the fun was in the freedom. The city was ours to destroy, and destroy it we did. Mostly with terrible parking. Attention prisoners! Unauthorized nostalgia detected. I really have no idea why I'm attempting a German accent. If there's one game that defines endless afternoons of hopeful failure, it's The Great Escape. A bleak, grey prison camp, a strict routine, suspicious guards with pixelated eyes that saw everything, and two kids convinced they could outsmart it all with sheer determination and an unhealthy amount of hope. James and I spent hours days trying to break out of this place. We scoured every inch of the camp, checking for secret tunnels, collecting items like we were in some Colditz-themed episode of Blue Peter, and carefully avoiding patrols. Well, mostly avoiding, occasionally forgetting, often running. But do you know what made it even better? We gave the guards names, our teachers' names. The guy who always stood by the gate, that was Mr. Wood, our music teacher. He used to spray us with what he called duck water from the pond. The patrolling one with the unpredictable pattern, Mrs. Grimston. She taught English but clearly majored in crushing dreams and spotting contraband maps. We'd sit there hunched over the keyboard, whispering like actual prisoners of war. Wait, Grimo's coming, stay behind the barrel. Go now before Woody sees us. It was stressful, it was chaotic, it was glorious. And even though we never actually escaped, not once, we didn't care. Because every time we booted it up, we weren't just playing a game, we were back in that POW camp trying to pull off the impossible, one failed tunnel at a time. The Great Escape wasn't about winning for us, it was about the journey, the sneaking, the hiding, the joy of discovery, and the pure, ridiculous satisfaction of outwitting a guard named after your school teachers. Dizzy. He's round, he's fragile, and he's about to get absolutely wrecked by a bird. Before Dark Souls made us suffer with style, there was Dizzy. The world's most optimistic egg, dropped into a cartoon nightmare with one inventory slot, no health bar, and enemies that operated entirely on chaos and spite. Dizzy wasn't just a game, it was a trial, a test of patience, a rite of passage. You could only carry one item at a time, which meant every puzzle was also a logistics problem. Need the spade from the top of the tree to use on the mushroom entrance? Too bad, you're still carrying the burning torch. Hope you like backtracking. And then there was the wildlife. Birds with the most chaotic flight paths imaginable, flapping in like feathery assassins with a grudge. Spiders descended from above like they were being dropped in by Satan himself. And apples. Oh, the apples. They didn't fall from trees, they waited in trees, like snipers, like fruity Newtonian snipers. There was no mercy, no second chances. Dizzy was fragile. One hit and you were a sunny-sided tragedy. And yet we loved it. We took it in turns to play and we got obliterated hundreds of times. But somehow we couldn't stop playing. We had to get further. We had to know what that item did. We had to see if this time, maybe, the apple wouldn't kill us. And then one day it happened. We finished it. I still remember the feeling, part disbelief, part joy, and part numbness from sitting cross-legged for too long. We'd done it. We'd solved the puzzles, dodged the birds, and carried that single item to glory one screen at a time. Dizzy wasn't just a game, it was survival. It was friendship. And it was the first time we ever realised that sometimes, even when the world throws birds, spiders, and malicious apples at you, if you just keep bouncing, you might make it. That's why it's my number one. And there you have it. 10 legendary ZX Spectrum games that didn't just shape our childhoods, they button mashed their way into our souls. From escaping prisons and sabotaging spies to flipping ATVs and trying not to get crushed by falling apples. Each one carved a memory that's stuck around way longer than any save file ever did. And no manic miner in sight. Big shout out to James, whose Specky got that much hammer it needed new RAM, who crashed his bike in style, and somehow always knew where I'd hide in Spy vs. Spy. And to everyone else who grew up hammering keys, typing in pokes, and playing until the screen burned your eyeballs, this one's for you. Thanks for watching.